Bill Bierds, welcome to David Anderson Talking Market Data.
Thank you, David.
We're already interrupting each other. Classic podcast.
Exactly.
You know, we're human beings. We're not robots. Exactly. So I'm so pleased you're doing this podcast. You and I have chatted about this before. And I've learned a few things as I've done a few of these podcasts. I'm going to try and keep these slightly shorter, so I won't waffle anymore. People know what David Anderson Talking Market Data is by now, I believe, but they don't necessarily know who Bill Bierds is and why Bill Bierds is here. So tell us briefly about Bill Bierds.
Thank you, David, for the opportunity to do this with you, and I think this is just a great series. So what I want to say is I've watched your other podcasts, and I would say that most of the folks you've had so far have been from the market data industry. And I will say that I'm not necessarily from the market data industry. I spent most of my career working at Citibank and at IBM and as primarily a technologist. And I stumbled upon market data when I was at Solace 8 or 9 years ago. So I'm actually coming at this from a different angle, I think, than most of the people. And I think that offers me a new perspective, an independent perspective on the market. So I look forward to hearing more about what other podcasts have to say, but I think I'm going to have a different point of view on this than others.
I think that's fresh and that's interesting. I think I've been in the industry 40 years, and the danger is, can you get stale? Can you get stuck in your own ways? That's a danger. So I think it's good having somebody with a fresh perspective. Although I consider you now not a veteran of the market data industry, but you've been in it for a while now. So I think you've got to know us, and you've got to know, the market data industry. It's great to have you with us and with the industry.
I've been at it for 7 years, so I've learned a lot. But So for sure.
And look, for everybody listening or watching, your LinkedIn profile will be attached in the notes below. So anybody who wants to find out the detailed history of Bill Bierds, they can look it up there. So let's dive in to the topic that we wanted to talk about. Market data systems is something that I've chatted about with a couple of my other podcast guests, and I think I will be talking about it with other guests as we come forward. Getting your perspective, what is a market data system? And I think more importantly, what is new about market data systems? I mean, you guys, particularly BCC Group, what is the new face of market data systems? How is it different from what's gone before?
Let me start by just making some clarifications here. I view market data as anything that clients use to achieve alpha. So people think of market data as being pricing. People think of market data as being real time or ultra low latency data, going over microwaves and this kind of thing, right? The flash voice kind of model, right? But to me, market data is anything that a client uses to achieve alpha. So it could be pricing data, it could be alternative data, it could be reference data, it could be research data, it could be weather data. So our point of view is that anything a client needs in order to be able to make good investment decisions for their portfolios, for their clients, we're in that business. And so I think that's one thing I wanted to just state first of all. Second of all, I think the market data industry is upside down at the moment. I think that the pendulum has swung away from the consumer of the data. I think that the data consumer is the most important person here. They're the ones that are paying the bills. And I use the phrase fair value, like a John Bogle, Peter Lynch kind of statement. But I think that it's important that we recognize that a product needs to meet the requirements of the clients. And that's the most important thing. And so we are in the business of making sure that the client has the choice to decide where they want to go with their market data needs. I think in the world as it exists today, it's been very centralized across a few different providers. And I think we want to make sure that the client has the ability to choose what data sources they want to work with. And that's the whole purpose of we think of those the new market data systems. The new market data systems are about neutrality and about competition and flexibility. And that's where we see things going as a company from BCC Group. And all of our technology is focused on not only helping the clients to get better access to market data, but also helping the data vendors, the data providers make their data more easily available to their clients.
So picking up on some of those points, sort of neutrality, independence from having choice, I think that's the key word. Those are all great things. Those are good things. I don't really think anybody would argue with that. But the question is, how do you achieve that? How do you deliver that? How do you provide that? Surely all customers would want that. So what's happened? What are you coming to them new with that they didn't have before?
We need to separate the data from the technology. We need the clients to be able to make decisions about where they want to get their data from using independent technology. At BCC Group, we don't sell data. We sell technology. So our focus is on dropping into a client's environment, whether it be on-prem or in the cloud, the technology that they need in order to be able to get access to market data. And it isn't about taking out a data provider. It isn't about getting rid of anybody or any kind of vengeance or anything, right? It's all about making sure that when a client wants access to a new piece of data, whether it be alternative data or be research data or something, that they have an easy way to turn it on and turn it off, right? And there isn't a lot of technology that gets in the way of them being able to get access to what they need. And that's how we view things, right? It's also worth mentioning that the two most important things to a client are managing costs. Market data is the second largest cost outside of HR within the company. I've heard that said many times. But also, they also want to protect themselves from audits as well. And I think that the having so many different market data entitlement systems makes it very difficult for the clients to control what they're using, where the data is being used. So I think it's important that we not only focus on price and addressing the pricing issues and introducing more competition, that we also help the client to protect themselves against audit issues and so forth and so on.
I mean, I'm going to play devil's advocate a little bit here. You know, we're friends, Bill. I love what you guys are doing. But again, you know, I'm the voice of the audience so, wouldn't a certain other set of providers out there be saying, well, we already provide choice. I mean, there's any of the systems. And I think let's get to the nub of it. You pointed out, to separate the data provider from the data system provider, the technology, as you said, the market data system. I came from Reuters way back when. Anybody's watched these podcasts, I'm talking about Triarch and RMDS. Those are the things I worked on. I didn't work on TREP and RDCS or whatever it's called now. From my old alma mater, which was Reuters way back when, is now part of LSEG. But I would have argued in the olden days, Reuters as it was then, we understand the data. We know how it's all constructed. We're best placed to be able to understand also how to construct a market data system. And by the way, you can plug in data feeds from all sorts of other providers, competitors to us, if you so desire. So you don't feel you're being sort of excluded from changing. That's me spinning, a particular story of old. Where would you argue with that devil's advocate point of view? Argue is too strong a word.
Yeah, I would say that the independence. I think independence is very important. And a good example might be in your car. You use Google Maps in your car, and it's available to you no matter what hardware you're running it on. I think this is where I think the world needs to go, and this is what we're advocating for. That the data consumer has access to not only there are a number of data consolidators that are out there. LSE, Bloomberg, Iris, FactSet. There's a number of them, right? And so the client needs to have the opportunity to pick the data provider, the data consolidator that works best for them. Okay. That's our point of view. And it comes down to pricing. It comes down to quality of service, comes down to customer service, right? These are the things that we should be measuring our engagements with, right? If you're not happy with your current provider, you think the prices are too high, whether it be a direct exchange connection or be a connection to a broker dealer or be a connection to some other source, you should be able to make a change without having it be an empty threat. It should be something that you really can seriously do. And I think that's what makes the future different. And by the way, at present, there are very few data consumers that are doing this, right? It's very new, right? And it's something that we're trying to lead the way on here. Again, we don't pick providers. We don't get involved in that. We never say to somebody, I prefer this one versus that one. People feel very strongly about LSE data and how good the quality is. People feel very good about Bloomberg data and the quality of it. That's not really our concern. Our concern is just creating that neutrality and that flexibility so that the consumer can have fair value. That's our point of view.
So if somebody out there, a consumer firm, has already got an implementation of systems and data and what have you. And they're starting to ask themselves that question. They want to be able to switch data providers for service points of view, for pricing points of view, for whatever reason that they want to change. And I recognize, and I have seen and heard this, that it is difficult to change data vendors. I mean, again, I'm not going to pontificate on why that's difficult. I'm going to ask you actually. So why has that been? Why is it difficult? What are the obstacles put in the way of consumer firms to be able to switch vendors? How can you break that down?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it is just, if it ain't broke, don't touch it, right?
Yeah.
And I think as you said, and your other folks you've interviewed have said, this market has been this way for 40 or 50 years. Well before you and I were even in the market data was being delivered by the current set of providers, right? So this is an industry that's going to take some time to change. Our point of view is, don't bite off too much too quickly, right? Our point of view is, implement a small neutral platform. Maybe it's the one platform, maybe it's some other provider's neutral platform, but implement a small one platform into your environment and just get started. Just get started down the path, right? Demonstrate the success of it, demonstrate the value of it, demonstrate what it can do to management as well as to your team, and then over time, grow that independent, neutral environment to become the major way in which you get data. But again, this industry has not changed that much. I mean, yes, the technology's changed. Yes, data has gotten faster and so forth and so on. But this is an issue that has not changed and not been neutral for a very long time, forever, ever, actually. And I think it's time for this to be introduced slowly, carefully. Yeah, we have a few clients that have done this already, and they're very happy with their ability to get access from any source. They're already looking at other ways of getting data and other sources of data they want to get because they have a neutral platform now. The success has been seen, but it's still early days, and it's something we need to work through and need to get people comfortable with.
And I think there's a couple of things that I would sort of bring up. I mean, I think it's interesting. In various podcast discussions I've had, the concept of talent has come up. A lot of that is about new talent, but also a chunk of it is about the talent at the tail end. Frankly, my age group, not a youngster like you, Bill, but the tail end Charlies, where there is a certain level of expertise out there. And again, the devil there is an awful lot of technology out there, and there are certain groups of people who know how to support, to fix, to adapt that technology. And to some extent, I was going to use the word a dying breed, that's probably a little bit, but they're a retiring breed, so there's less of them now. But I know that is a concern for a lot of those clients. Is, you said it, it's the status quo, it's something they're all familiar with, but they've also got expertise on that. They've invested a lot of time. Their people have invested a lot of time in understanding. How easy or difficult is it to reskill around a new platform? I mean, you've done this a few times with a few of your clients. So at the human end, having people there who understood the old incumbent, and now they have to understand the newer player, your good selves in this example. How does that play out?
David, I haven't seen when the data consumer or the client makes a decision to go down this neutral path with us. I haven't seen a lot of reticence to this. I've actually seen folks, once the commitment is made to do this, I've seen a lot of support coming from the data consumers, right? Once the decision is made, a lot of the folks that have been in this business for a long time are looking to do something different. They recognize that something needs to change, right? And I think that's something that we've seen in our experiences. But I also think it's very important that you get senior management committed as well. Our most successful clients have been when a senior level strategist has said, this is the direction we have to go in. Cloud is a great example, by the way. And we'll get to cloud, I think, in another podcast. But the point is that cloud is something that's very, very a real change maker type of space when it comes to cloud, when it comes to market data. And so I think there's certainly going to be people that are going to be scared of change, scared of this kind of change. But I've seen that there's much more, people are excited about where this is going and what this is doing to the market. And technologists and developers and market data managers, I think they they like seeing things changing and evolving, you know. What I've got to do is I've got to make sure that we keep the risks down. I've got to make sure we start small and that we get them comfortable. And that's why we offer at BCC Group at least a free evaluation for a couple of months, so they can take a look at the technology and play with it and get comfortable with it. How does the entitlement system work? How do the feed handlers work? How does the data flow? How does the API work? This kind of thing. Because we need them to be comfortable. This is very different than what they've been doing in the past. And we want them to get comfortable with it first and then grow it over time, as I mentioned earlier.
So when you're at the early sales stage, what are the typical questions, dare I say, objections or concerns? Where do you find you have to pay most attention to put people at their ease?
I think the most important thing is for first of all, if they responded to my or they've reached out to me, they're already thinking that this is something they might want to do. Okay. So what I try to do as quick as I can is get them on the phone with one of my existing clients who have done this before and have a conversation about what the motivations were for why they did this. What were some of the challenges they had while they did this? And even what are some of the experiences they had with BCC Group and how we did it as a technology provider, but I think that's what we're looking for first is just to get them comfortable with the fact that there are other people doing this, there are other companies doing this, and that they need to just have those conversations.
I mean, there must be another dimension. I mean, it's interesting. You spent a large part of your career at IBM. And there always used to be a saying, it's no longer the case, but there always used to be a saying, nobody got sacked for buying IBM. And to some extent, nobody got sacked for buying certain incumbents. So there's a familiarity. If you follow the herd, if you say everybody else has done this, so I'm going to do this to your bosses, there's a safety, there's a comfort factor. And that's one thing I'd ask you to comment on. But the other thing is large companies versus small companies. You guys, BCC Group, and some of the other players in the space that you're operating in are relatively small companies compared to the behemoths that are out there as the established players. How does that play out in terms of service and support and whatever and reach?
Yeah, I think one of the funny stories I like to tell is that when I worked for IBM, I had no trouble getting in the door, none at all. Yeah. When I just set up my IBM, people would have no problem accepting my meeting, and that's changed with working for a smaller company. What I'm happy about, David, is that there are several companies now bubbling up, and I like to use the analogy, the water's rising, right?
Yeah.
I think all boats rise, exactly. So I see other people entering into the space that we're in, right? Not all of them have the depth and the breadth of capabilities that we have, the one platform. But they're growing and they're changing and they're adjusting and so forth. But I think there's a family of companies that are starting to introduce this new way of doing business within the market data space. And so that's encouraging. Yeah. I mean, I think the most important thing to demonstrate is success, right? As soon as I can get a client on the phone, as soon as I can get a prospect on the phone with one of my existing clients, and can talk about what their experience has been and the benefits they're seeing, that's good. That's going to address a lot of the concerns about working with someone new and working with someone smaller than the current behemoths that you mentioned earlier.
I'll hit you with two other points before we bring this particular podcast, this shorter podcast. I'm doing shorter podcasts. I've learned my lesson. Two thoughts, one is symbology and the other one is data models. In other words, if one has, in terms of making requests for data from different providers have a whole different symbology, naming conventions for the data. And they may also have a different data model. In other words, how their records are structured, the different fields they have and how that is all structured. And again, I believe that is often one of the sort of critical issues when looking at these systems. How have you guys addressed those issues?
So we're advocating for neutrality from beginning to end, right? So the one platform is designed to be a neutral platform that can handle any data source of any data type at pretty much any data latency. We don't do ultra low, nano, micro, but we are definitely interested in any kind of data set through the historical. I think that the symbology and the fields are a concern. They've been using these symbologies and using these field maps fields for decades, right? So we advocate for a neutral symbology and neutral field mapping as well. Most of our clients just carry the symbologies through, carry the fields through our platform. We just normalize the technology. We don't change anything about the data. Some of our clients actually have taken the time to put mapping in and mapping to an independent set of symbologies. The field mapping is normally not a problem to be able to map fields, bid and ask, so forth and so on, laughs, this kind of thing. Some of the data vendors, some of the data providers have a unique symbol, have a unique field requirements, that we need to be able to map to. But generally speaking, we advocate for that neutral symbology, neutral field mapping, that kind of thing. And that's what we're driving, because we want the customer to be able to not have to worry about the applications downstream at all, actually. We almost don't even know where the data is coming from. And we have a solution in our portfolio it's a real-time feed handler where you can, multi-feed handler where you can switch from one to the other in real time. The downstream application has no idea where the data is coming from. They just know they're still getting IBM. They're still getting the currency pair. They don't know that it's been changed because something has happened upstream that has caused the data to stop or be interrupted.
Let me finish this conversation with a comment that Dave Stone, who was one of my previous guests, actually made. Is there not a case of jumping out of the frying pan into the fire? What I mean by that is the neutrality, break free from the existing providers. The stickiness, that was a word that we always used in my days in Reuters, everything. We wanted people to be sticky, and clients don't like being stuck with something or being stuck to it. But isn't there a danger that all they're doing is switching who they're stuck to? You're creating an abstraction layer which will talk to multiple different data vendors. But at the end of the day, is the client then dependent on BCC Group? If they, in the very unlikely event they fall out with you, what are they not stuck with you?
So our clients have access to our API and we're open for clients that are currently paying subscription to us. So they have access to the source code. So if they want to switch their platform, they can do that. So we're not looking to lock them in any way to our technology. That would not be our goal. That we're actually against all kinds of lock-in. So I would say that the big lock-in here is not the technology of itself. That the big lock-in is the fact that the data provider and the technology are the same company. I think that's the big lock-in, right? We do everything we can to make sure that we can be open and independent and give customers flexibility once they get on the one platform. We certainly hope they don't want to change when they get there. But and what we've seen so far is the clients are very happy with the product once they get it deployed. It works very, very flexibly and it works very easily. But yeah, we're trying to be open with our existing clients. They have access to our source code. Then that shouldn't. We don't want to view that as lock-in. And even the mapping technology between symbologies and field mappings and so forth is all independent as well.
Each of those topics is probably a podcast in its own right. And look, I'm going to say to the audience out there, I have an open invitation. I already have been speaking to some of those other smaller companies that are operating, competing, if you will, in that space with you. And I still know some of the people from the incumbents. And I'm sure I'm going to be talking, let's be blunt, people from LSEG, people from Bloomberg, whatever. I want to hear all sides. I wanted to talk about a topic very close to BCC Group's heart and your heart: market data in the cloud. Now, I've been talking about market data in the cloud, or listening to market data in the cloud, I don't know, probably 10 plus years. It's been going a while. And a lot of what I've learned and heard has been from attending some of the events you guys also run an independent events activity called Market Data in the Cloud, a community of people interested in market data in the cloud. So I've got some questions. I'm trying to sort of educate myself and maybe educate the audience as well. Is it important to distinguish between market data or data in the cloud and technology or systems in the cloud? Are those two distinct things, or do we munge them all together?
Yeah, so I would say that The cloud has obviously become the dominant platform for most industries for doing mostly everything. I think financial services has been a little bit slower to get going because of the regulatory issues and so forth and so on. And some concerns around privacy and security and this kind of thing. But I think that's changing now. I think that we've seen, you mentioned earlier, this organization called Market Data in the Cloud, which we really run independently of BCC Group. And we really we don't talk about BCC Group or the whole platform really at these events at all. It's really just meant to pull together like-minded people that believe in the cloud, and get them talking to each other. And we encourage people who are thinking about the cloud to come to these events as well. Unlike FISD, which has a much broader remit, we focus very heavily on the market data and the cloud and the evolution of the cloud with market data. Yeah, and I think the cloud is, when we first started talking about this, Maurizio and I, Maurizio Gonzalez Evans, about 6 or 7 years ago, we thought it would happen a lot faster, and it hasn't. It's been very slow to go. And there's been a number of reasons for that. But so we've sort of been patient with the market, and we've been sort of tried to encourage it using the MDC organization to see where it can go and how we can create some comfort within the industry about the cloud being the final destination for all of this technology. But yeah, what we're talking about here is we're talking about all of your software technology, all of your market data platform running in the cloud. We're talking about all the data sources coming from cloud sources as well. So LSE, Bloomberg, Refinitiv, Morningstar, whatever they might be, all the data sources being from the cloud as well. Independent cloud entities around the world to address the latency concerns that you might have. And also all the applications themselves. The data source, there's a platform in the applications, right? All the applications also running in the cloud. Okay. We're a long way from that. But slowly but surely we're starting to see clients move apps to the cloud. The data providers are moving their data sources into the cloud, and then the platform is moving into the cloud as well. And that's ultimately having everything in the cloud together. We'll be hybrid for a while, but that's where we're going.
Because I would imagine a lot of this inertia, if I can call it that, is to do with legacy. The vast majority of market data systems, definitely, by definition, is on premises. It has been operating on premises for many, many years. It's interesting. I was talking to somebody recently and remembering my days selling Triarch and RMDS. And when I used to draw a diagram, I would draw a cloud and then a zigzag line to show the telecoms line coming to. So in a sense, the data even many years ago was coming from a Reuters data center or a Bloomberg data center or a New York Stock Exchange data center. It wasn't quite the cloud, but it was from a remote data center. And I think another analogy I would sort of throw into the conversation is I recognize that inertia as well. We've been talking about market data in the cloud for a long time, and it's intriguing that many firms have not put all of their systems. They put something in the cloud, but not everything in the cloud. And yet somebody threw the example of me about crypto, and I'll sort of phrase this point. One of the comments that I've heard mentioned is you won't get exchange data in the cloud until matching engines are in the cloud. So there's a lot of exchanges have services in the cloud, but I think it's fair to say that not any of them, I'm not sure. So I would love somebody to correct me on this, educate me. I don't think any of them or many of them have the matching engine in the cloud. But crypto exchanges started out life in the cloud. So their matching engines are in the cloud. So it's almost like it's just making people feel comfortable. And I think that the financial industry is very risk averse, very focused on risk and privacy. Yeah, I threw a lot at you then. I'm just
So I'd say the word inertia comes to mind, right? That I think this is something that's maybe difficult for people to go to the cloud. The whole matching engine thing, I don't necessarily want to get into because that's getting into ultra low and so forth and so on. And I don't think the cloud is I don't think the cloud is ready for that. Multicast either. I don't think the cloud is quite ready for that either. But I like to say that I focus on the other 99%.
Which is a lot, a lot.
Which is 10 to 20 milliseconds and slower to all the way to historical. That's the space that we're in. A lot of clients think they need ultra low, and many of them do, but they will find that actually they're not getting data that fast. They don't need data that fast to be able to do what they want to do. But putting all that aside, I think the clients are need time to get used to and time to get comfortable with the cloud. And I think that's what we need to start to encourage. As I mentioned before, the data consumers, the data providers are already moving things into the cloud. Ultimately it comes from a data center somewhere, but the data provider gets the data into the cloud. It's there. It's available for the data consumer to connect up to, and get the data out of the cloud. And it's available for them to also then downstream to apps that are also in the cloud. But we've seen the cloud be slow for other reasons, right? I think clients are this economies of scale. They all expected this to be cheaper. They all expected this to be something that they could record as to their CFO as being a huge cost savings, right? And what's happened is people have lifted and shifted existing technology into the cloud. That is caused all kinds of challenges because it hasn't made it any cheaper. The applications need to be rewritten so they can take advantage of the benefits of the cloud, all the elasticity, all the different storage capabilities and so forth and so on that the cloud enables you to do, and then enables the cost savings that the cloud provides, right? And so I think a lot of clients and data consumers have actually just not seen the benefit that they should have seen. And we have an event coming up on February 20th here called MDC, which you mentioned earlier. And one of the topics we're going to have at that event is going to be doing the cloud right. And we've invited ADM in. You'd be surprised at how much is going on from a chip technology standpoint to make the cloud more efficient. And you mentioned this when we went to your engineering session. It was your engineering session that David, you ran, where ADM came in and talked about that. They're going to be on a panel. We've got Oracle coming in. They're going to be on a panel. We've got a company called Strategic Blue coming in that focuses on FinOps, right? And what do you have to do to better manage the actual operations of your environment? Because that I think that slowed things down regarding the cloud and financial services with market data, and it's all fixable, right? But it just requires someone to be managing it, monitoring it, and maintaining it, and not letting systems run through the weekend if they don't have to. Don't keep your dev environment up running 24/7. You don't need to do that. You can shut it down and bring it up very easily in the cloud to save costs. If your production environment doesn't need to be running from noon on Saturday to noon on Sunday, turn it off, right? Bring it down and bring it back up again, because there's no need to have all this data running and all this information flowing around, unless your business requires it, of course. But yeah, there's all sorts of efficiencies, all sorts of elasticity capabilities that are not being taken advantage of today. We really need to help and be there to help our clients do the cloud right. And that's where I think we need to go.
Is part of that inertia a degree of unfamiliarity, dare I even say ignorance? I mean, the cloud's quite different. And it's interesting, you talked about that firm, Strategic Blue. I came to one of your events and they were presenting. I think the whole commercials, the way cloud is paid for, is quite different from the traditional sort of on-prem systems and services that most of the market data / the financial community is used to. So do you think and one of the things I think you do so well in your market data in the cloud is it's education. Do you think it's just a slow, steady slog of educating our community that will enable them to break free from that inertia?
I think the cloud providers have a responsibility here to help their clients. They're making a ton of money on the cloud, and they like it making a ton of money. They're going to end up shooting themselves in the foot if they're not careful. And I think that we need to encourage them. And I've been working a lot with Oracle lately, who have a different point of view on the cloud. And they're looking at egress costs as being something that should not be a challenge for clients. Right? So
and just pausing on that, Bill. I mean, you've got Ingress is putting data into the cloud. And as my simplistic understanding, that all the cloud providers say, bring all your data, come to us. We're lovely. Yeah. We'll look after you. Come to us. But then, as soon as you want to take some data out, the money or the ka-ching, 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 and to your point, Oracle, I think, are breaking the mold by offering either zero or low cost. Is that?
I think that's an issue. I think it may be a moment in time problem because you've got the data sources that many of them are still on-prem. Your applications many of them are still on-prem, and the platforms are in the cloud. All of those things will be in the cloud eventually, and the egress costs will become less of a challenge. But I think while we're in this hybrid world, the egress costs need to be addressed. I don't think their bark is bigger than their bite. I don't think the
Yeah.
costs are that bad, but I think there's a fear in the market over what it costs to pull data out of the cloud. So I think the cloud FinOps business is definitely an interesting space at the moment. There's a lot of firms, People is one of them, that actually have this capability of doing this, but there are others as well. So my point of view on this is that this is a moment in time where things are sitting in prem and in the cloud and so forth and so on, and that will change as everything moves into the cloud, and everything will ultimately move into the cloud. Just a matter of how long it's going to take.
And I mean, what are the sort of types of data that you've seen most typically push the cloud? I mean, I'm guessing that things like tick history and storing tick history. I was having a conversation with somebody literally an hour ago about that. Are there particular data sets that have more obviously moved to the cloud?
I would say definitely it's travel through down the spectrum, right? It started off with historical data as the natural thing, analytics, data lakes, blah, blah, blah. That kind of thing has all been, that naturally goes to the cloud. As you move down on the latency scale and get into 100 milliseconds, down to 20, 10 milliseconds, you start approaching ultra low. That's when things start to make people nervous. We at BCC Group have been testing with 20, 30 millisecond speeds in the cloud with very high reliability, right? So I know that the cloud providers are all working to make sure that the cloud is as reliable and as resilient as it possibly can be. And I think as the comfort level improves out there with the cloud, you're going to start to see more and more data move to the cloud. I just want to think also, and that is that you cannot undervalue how easy it is to do a failover, to go from one zone to the other, zone A to zone B with your workload. If you see a challenge in zone A, go to zone B, or going from one region to another region in the cloud. And the key thing here is testing, right? You need to be able to test this on a regular basis to make sure it's available to you. And you can do this. It's so challenging to test an on-prem primary and an on-prem secondary environment. That's incredibly complex. But in the cloud, the ability to fail over within milliseconds, 20, 30 milliseconds, 15 milliseconds. And we've been testing this at BCC Group for a few years now, right? So the data speed is proving to be not an issue in the cloud. The ability to be resilient and address things like DORA and so forth is proving to be not an issue. It's just a matter of clients starting to test it. And one other thing I'll also mention that is the fact that at BCC Group, we do all of our initial engagements with our clients in the cloud. They can go on-prem if they want to, and that's their choice. And then we're happy to do that. And the one platform was prem and in the cloud, no problem. It's all containerized and everything. But we like to get them going in the cloud first so they can have a quick and easy view of how things should be and could be. And then we'll put them back on-prem if they want to, but our goal is to get them into the cloud if we can.
And I think you used the phrase a sort of hybrid environment. I mean, one needs to be careful with these words, but I mean, a hybrid effectively implies where you make use of the cloud, but you can still run some other things on-prem. So at your own pace, effectively, you can decide what you want to put in cloud, but you might as well take advantage of in some parts of your business of the cloud, and hopefully you will be able to get more and more of your parts of the business in the cloud. I thought it was interesting what you said, when we were talking about egress costs, if you're having some sort of system that takes lots of data, maybe from exchanges or data providers, and then you're sort of all of that information is being plowed back out again or something, you might have a reasonable amount of egress costs. But effectively, if you're having all of your applications running in the cloud, then maybe you don't just need to see all of the information. You only need to see the answers or the specifics that application outputs. Therefore, you can reduce your
exactly.
egress.
Yeah.
I mean, is everything perfect and rosy? I mean, we talked about things like egress costs. I mean, what are the challenges? What are you guys know the cloud, and saying the cloud, it isn't one cloud. There's AWS, Microsoft Azure, there's Oracle, your old mob, IBM. But I think it's fair to say that, AWS, I think, were probably the leader. Well, they led the charge. They were one of the first.
They are the leader.
I think Google was sort of next behind. Microsoft, again, you can't, massive operation. Oracle a little bit more recently. But I mean, again, the good and the bad. What should people be careful about? What should they watch out for? I mean, you're a great advocate of the cloud, so there's a massive amount of positives. But what would your advice be that anybody's slightly newer to this.
Yeah, there are people that can speak better about this than I can, David. I'll tell you that right now. But people that are more technologists than me. But what I would say is that it's important that they think about their applications, how they should be built in the cloud, because they may need to be rewritten. There may be a lot of work involved with making them cloud ready and taking full advantage of the cloud. I think that's probably the biggest hurdle. Just taking as the application is written today and just moving it up into the cloud and just putting it there in its existing form is not taking full advantage of the cloud. And so that time needs to be spent to make sure they do that.
And I think talking about intelligent people who know what they're talking about, what I really need is your son, William Bierds, on this podcast, as he is very eloquent. But again, that's there's layers.
Far more eloquent than me. Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, again, from your position where you're sitting, what is the new stuff? What's the new shiny stuff? What's the cool stuff that you're aware of that might be coming down the track? The pike, as you Americans would say it. What are we likely to see in 2025? Is it more of the same, just polished up a bit, or are you hearing any new stuff?
I think that the breadth of data sources is growing exponentially. I think it's only what you mentioned crypto before. It's not only crypto and all this stuff going on with crypto, but it's all sorts of alternative data and so forth. We were at an event in New York, FIST event. Again, I'm sorry mentioning FIST, but where there was an analyst there from Deloitte, I think, who talked about alternative data and how it's growing and expanding significantly. So I think the clients are going to need they need other data sources in order to be able to continue to achieve alpha. And I think that's the space becoming the most interesting. And the more and more sources, the easier we make it for clients to get data into their environment, the better. Certainly the one platform helps with that, being neutral and giving you easy access to other data sources, but also the cloud helps with that as well. If a crypto provider or an alternative data provider makes the data available via the cloud, that makes it easier for the data consumer to get access to it. I think that breadth of data is expanding, and we need to make it easier for the data consumers to use that data.
Bill, the topic of this conversation that we're having, the high level topic is data as a service. Now, as I said to you offline, I'm hearing that phrase used quite a lot in the last 12 months or so. In the preceding, 4 or 5 years, I've been hearing the as a service. I suppose the classic as a service is SaaS, software as a service. But there's, platform as a service, hardware as a service, network as everything can be as a service. Can you help me out here? What is this something really new? Or have we just put a shiny new name on something that already exists? Isn't as a service just a subscription? So you rent something or you pay a subscription rather than a capital purchase. I'm thinking of software as a service. I have to pay a monthly charge for my Office 365 rather than buying Microsoft Office. I mean, what's going on here in the as a service and then focusing on the data as a service?
Yeah. So let me. There's a couple of different ways to look at this. Let me just start with this thought. We've had several conversations on this podcast with you and I, as well as other podcasts, as well as other events, where we've talked about the fact that the expertise in the market data space is retiring, okay, and moving out of the industry. And there's a lot of concern about how do we gather the skills together to be able to continue to service our requirements when it comes to market data. So I think this is the important thing about the as a service model, is it gives the customer the ability to bring in a service provider that can manage their market data estate for them. And I think that's where we're going. That's where much of the industry is going to go. Today, most of the technology, most of the permissioning and entitlement work, most of the 24/7 management of those environments is being handled by the financial services firms. They've got 10, 20, 30, 40, hundreds of people that their whole purpose in life for existing is to manage their market data estate on-prem. And that is, those people are starting to retire and starting to move on to other things. And the young people that are coming up, we're seeing a growing list of people through rising stars. I think you call it FISD, right? We're starting to see a growing number of people that are younger, but nowhere near the number that we need to maintain this industry and this incredibly important industry, right? So I think that the as a service to me, and I call it market data as a service, or we call it market data as a service, is really about getting all of those, getting that expertise consolidated into a service provider that can manage all of that for the clients, so they don't have to worry about that kind of thing anymore if they don't want to. Not all of them are going to do this, but some of them are definitely going to go down this path. And we have a client here in the States that's decided to go completely as a service with their market data estate. The RFI we received was all about my team is retiring. I can't find new resources. They're in they're not in New York City. They're not in a Chicago. They're not in a popular place necessarily. So they're having trouble getting resources that they need. And so they're going with an as a service model to a centralized control point, leveraging the cloud to be able to do all their market data. And it's working out well.
And so that as a service, market data as a service, but the as a service premise is pushing skills, services, activity away from your on-prem. We've used the word on-prem in other discussions that we have, on premises. You're pushing it remotely. So those human beings performing those functions are not sitting on a floor in your building in London or New York, but effectively that work is being done by somebody remotely in a different location, but you're accessing that service, you're paying some sort of subscription. And I suspect the key thing, it's a shared service. So if there's a human being in your operation who is the expert on Indian stock market data, maybe you can afford to have a whole person doing that. But am I presuming that it might suit some people that there is in this remote service a single person who's the Indian data specialist, but actually 2 or 3 firms or 5 or 6 firms that are all plugging into this service can take advantage of that single person, and that's a more efficient and economies of scale play.
For sure.
I mean, am I understanding this correctly?
We are way upstream still on this, as you know. So this is very early days for this as a service when it comes to market data as a service, right? But you're on exactly the right point. It's the economies of scale. It's being able to share expertise. That's really where the value is from an operational standpoint. That's where I think the benefit is.
Sorry, go ahead, Bill.
I was going to say the other side of this also is the fact that clients don't necessarily need to have a dedicated infrastructure just to them. They could have a shared infrastructure. For instance, I'm talking to a few data providers about the fact that they have this world where they have their data with an independent lease line going to a client's data center or a client's cloud instance, right? And the question is, can the customer's environment run in the cloud and be a multi-tenant or a shared cloud instance where some of maybe the lower, I don't mean lower, I mean the tier 2, tier 3 institutions. And by the way, this isn't limited to financial institutions, treasury departments at manufacturing firms and insurance companies and federal organizations like the Bank of England or
Federal Reserve,
Federal Reserve Bank, right? I mean, these are companies that all use market data. How can we make it easier for them to tap into market data without having to worry about all of the infrastructure and all of the professional, all the personnel that are needed, right? We can help them with an as a service offering.
I literally had a conversation, I won't say who with somebody earlier on today who was asking my opinion about an as a service offering, not competitive with you at all, something different. And it struck me that maybe, and it was asking for advice of what I thought about their pitch, what they were suggesting doing. And I got to the crux of it. It was like, well, look, what you're coming along with is if you take this as a service, it was a big exchange fee as a service. Effectively, what you're doing is you're making it accessible to a less sophisticated, smaller company who, if you'd knocked on their door at another point in time, might have said they were not interested in this. But they were not interested in this because they thought it was out of their league or out of their reach. And if you can make some more sophisticated, complex offerings accessible because it's shared, so the economies of scale play out. I mean, I think, my experience of this industry is, frankly, the big bulge bracket firms, my friends at your Goldman Sachs, your JP Morgan and Barclays and whatever, they do have a big advantage because they've got their own economies of scale. I mean, they can still take advantage of stuff, but if you're more of a tier 1, tier 2 smaller player, maybe you can't play in certain games because it's just too expensive to get the ticket to enter the arena. I'm mixing my metaphors terribly, but you're making stuff more accessible, I presume, is one of the big benefits of this concept.
I think you'll find that the smaller firms, and small is a funny word, but the smaller firms, right, have not invested in the technology as much as the bigger firms have, and therefore they need to leverage these multi-tenant shared offerings that are out there to be able to continue to achieve alpha and continue to get access to the data they need now. And I'll say this also, as we mentioned in other podcasts, BC Group is all in the business of neutrality, and we're all in the business of making sure that clients have access to whatever data they need, right? And if there's a French firm that wants access to French data, a French data source, they should be able to get that easily, right? There should not be any challenge holding them back from doing that. And if technology gets in the way of them being able to do that, that's a problem, right? So if we can help with an as a service model to address this, that will go down this path because they want to gain the economies of scale, and they're also fearful of the fact that these people are retiring and they're losing their expertise. But yeah, I think this is the biggest advantage of all of this.
I would have thought even some of those bigger sophisticated players, they might have very specialist areas of their operation where, maybe they've got one or two they've got some activity going on that's very small scale, and that if they were actually to provide the services and the data for that small group, themselves, that would be expensive or prohibitive or whatever. And if they can do it's shared is the sort of operative word here, isn't it? You're sharing a central resource with other people, and you're benefiting from economies of scale. I don't know if this is a fair analogy. I was just thinking, in the olden days, 40 years ago, when I started out in market data, anybody's listening to my podcasts already, I've already sort of pontificated about green screens and the good old days of green screens. Because in the really early days, in the 80s, data was all provided to dumb terminals. So an awful lot of the intelligence, the data done by Reuters or Telerate, Bloomberg were only just coming into existence then, was sort of happening at a data center. So that model, all that work was being done for you. So in the olden days, the really olden days, all of that was done before you as an organization, a customer organization. But then slowly but surely in the late 80s, data feeds started to come along, and market data systems like Track or, and others at the time. And that in theory gave the customer all sorts of flexibility and whatever, but the flexibility required them to manage it all. And they sort of embraced that for 20 years. But I think it's now, hang on, push that back up to a data center, and for data center, read the cloud. It's almost full circle.
Also, don't forget that a lot of these companies are a conglomeration of many different acquisitions. And all of them have got different platforms, different entitlement systems, different technologies, different data centers, and so forth and so on. So there's some work to be done here in the industry to be able to I was speaking with a client who was not even a financial services client. It's a agricultural firm in America. And they were saying, they said they've got 10, 15 platforms running in their environment for 10, 15, 20, 100 different data sources, and they're spending a ton of money at managing all of that. So they're looking for a way to consolidate all of that onto one or only a few different platforms, right? They're looking at ways to move this stuff into the cloud, and they're looking at ways to, as you said before, they benefit from the economies of scale of not having all these different technologies running around in their environment that they've got to manage with different resources, right? So I think it's a huge opportunity. What we have to prevent happening is we have to prevent the clients from scaring them away because of the costs of the cloud and the costs of all of this, right? If they start to see bills come through that are more than they thought, or the CFOs start to become afraid of this, and they don't see the financial benefits of all of this. All of this is going to die in the vine, right? And there's no reason for it to die in the vine. It's all the right reasons. The other industries have seen how beneficial all of this is as a service and the cloud, and we need financial services need to see that as well. And we got to make sure we don't have any false starts, missteps.
Another thought that occurred to me is this whole concept. I was going to use the word a threat, but it's almost an opportunity. The financial industry, the capital markets specifically, are very concentrated in the City of London and Wall Street, New York and London. A big reason for that is because all the expertise concentrates around that. It becomes self-fulfilling. As it becomes concentrated, all of the labor, all of the expertise exists in London and New York. And if you want to operate out of Manchester or out of Kansas City or somewhere else, in the olden days, it was hard to do that because there wasn't expertise there. And I wonder if this new model, and I'd ask you the question, this as a service, whatever it is, the service is being provided remotely in a shared capacity. But the human expertise, the technology, where does it actually sit? I mean, the cloud isn't one place. The cloud is lots of different data centers or whatever. But if there's expertise being leveraged, if there's human skills being leveraged, do those people just sit wherever they want and are centralized through interacting with cloud-based infrastructure? I'm just trying to picture the human dimension to this.
I think this is getting into a whole different conversation around working from home and this kind of thing.
Yeah.
I think COVID has taught us that we can work remotely quite efficiently. Yeah. And I love the I forgot what was the name of the firm that just recently said, if you don't trust your employees, then you need to bring them back to the office. And if it doesn't start with trust, then where does it start, right? You need to be able to trust people to work for you, right? And I think it was Spotify, the CEO of Spotify said, no, my people are going to work from home forever. No, I trust them to do their jobs and I trust them to do what they need to do. Yeah. So, but that's a different conversation. My point is that I think the expertise stays where the expertise is. I think you're right. I think the experts are moving out of the city, have moved out of the city. And I think they come at this from a position of strength where they can say, listen, I'm good at this. I'm going to stay at home, and they're not going to necessarily lose their jobs for staying at home. But I think that the expertise is all over the world. I think that the firms that focus on MDaaS and doing MDaaS, market data as a service, are gathering these resources and are pulling these resources in and are growing and growing and growing these capabilities. So they'll be able to handle this. This isn't happening fast. Just like the neutrality story is a slow. We have the two words we use a lot at BCC Group is patience and perseverance, right? Yeah. I mean, you've got to, all you can do is talk to the client about what might be possible. Initially, they're going to say no. And then over time, maybe they're going to start to buy into what it is that we're advocating for. The same thing with market data as a service. We're so used to having our resources around us all the time, working for the companies that we work for. So it's going to take some time for them to start to move away from that. Is there a downside to this? Yes, there is. I mean, we need expertise in this market. We can't afford to have anything go wrong. We can't afford to have outages. We can't afford to have even 10, 15 seconds of data not flowing, right? So you've got to make sure that whoever takes over this workload for you, right, is there and ready and prepared to deal with whatever comes up, And someone said to me once, years and years ago when I was at IBM, what makes me, big tier one bank, think I know how to manage my workload and manage my servers and manage my better than a company that does this for many different firms, right? Whose entire existence relies on reliability, and skills and so forth and so on. This whole entity, this whole as a service entity exists and lives or dies on their ability to deliver a service. What makes me think that I at tier one bank can do this better? I know. It's arrogance is what,
So true. Yeah. But this also, I mean, this as a service concept, is it another variant of outsourcing? I mean, it is in essence outsourcing in another format. And I always remember a good friend of mine saying at a conference years ago, you can only outsource a solution, you can't outsource a problem. When people don't know how to solve something and they just sort of try and palm it off to somewhere else, that's usually a recipe for disaster. But if you understand if you've got a really good understanding of this service and how it should work and how it does work, but you can then, I suppose, appropriately and with confidence, pay for somebody else to do it because effectively you know what needs to be done and you understand all the elements of the workflow and you're simply, outsourcing it to a remote service provider, aka data or platform or whatever it is as a service. So, and I know you were uncomfortable that we were sort of, not uncomfortable is the wrong word, talking about COVID and things like this, but it changed the whole dynamic. So many things have changed. The working from home thing, the fact we're not on Zoom now, we're on Riverside, but the same concept of sort of video tools like this, all of the stuff that came into play during COVID has carried on. And I think it's an enabling factor for a new way of working. And I think this as a service, market data as a service, has great potential. Any parting thoughts?
Yeah, what I wanted to say was that I think to every industry, what they're selling is obviously critical, right? So we in financial services think of our requirements being much more important than anybody else's, right? But I would guarantee you that every single industry, manufacturing, or retail, or whatever that uses the cloud is just as nervous about their clients not being able to buy something online from them as the financial services guys are. So I think that the industry has moved in this direction and they found it to work well, the world has moved in this direction and they found it to work well. And I think it's just a matter of time before the financial services industry does more of this. And then, by the way, I'm not saying they haven't done it. They've got lots of things that run on the cloud today and that run as a service, but there's just so much more to be done. And even some of these critical workloads, there's just so much more work to be done. And I think there's a huge opportunity here for firms to step up and provide this kind of thing. Yeah. And you mentioned outsourcing. I think outsourcing has sort of a bad connotation to it. And I don't want to belittle in any way how important it is that what we need to do when it comes to as a service and what services are being provided. But yeah, I think this has been proven to work and it is a model that saves money. It is a model that provides better quality of service to the clients. And that ultimately, at the end of the day, the data consumer is the most important person here at the end of the day. And we've got to make sure they're getting the best service they could possibly get from whatever it is that we're doing with them.
Absolutely. And I think my parting comment was, I think we're going to hear a lot more about market data as a service, data as a service, XYZ as a service. I think we're going to see more and more of it. So I look forward to talking to you, Bill, more about this and other topics. So thank you. And I will see you again soon, I'm sure.
Thank you, David. Well done. Thank you, sir.
Bye-bye.